Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt leader within. Let's talk about seeing without seeing. Now, if you are a student of biology or you've ever had an opportunity to sit in a biology class and study the human body, it is an incredibly complex creation. Whether you, like me, are a person of faith and believe that God created mankind, or you believe in infinite intelligence, however we got here, this human body that you and I live in is an incredibly complex machine. And as we break down the individual components of the human body, the human eye stands out to me as a wonder of creative complexity. Now, this little organ, about the size of a nickel, as we look at a person's face, it's responsible for our eyesight. And this little tiny organ is incredibly powerful. Now, you may not know, but each eye contains around 107 million light-sensitive cells, and those cells can detect and distinguish over 10 million colors and over 500 different shades of gray. Now, if we want to compare our eyes to a computer, and thinking in terms of computational power, our eyes can perceive and process about 36,000 bytes of information every hour. Now, to break that down, that's the equivalent of viewing 36,000 high-resolution photos every hour, or about 10 high-resolution photos every single second. Now, if we want to compare the human eye to a digital camera, here's what I can tell you about that. The highest resolution cameras that we have available today, they pale in comparison to the eye's 576 megapixel capacity. There is no digital camera that can even come close to the complexity and the high resolution content that we take in every minute of every day through our eyes. Plus, I'll add this, there is no digital camera, no technology available to man that can match the eye's innate ability to change its focus. Maybe you didn't know, but we can change our focus up to 50 times a second. Now, the human eye, again, being an incredibly complex machine inside of our body, it has over 2 million working parts. Now, think about that in a little small instrument. Again, about the size, if we're looking at it, of a nickel, and really not much bigger than a large marble. Now, it also contains the only tissue in the entire body that has no blood vessels, and that's our cornea. Now, the iris, which is the colored portion of our eye, is incredibly distinct, 256 distinct features. By comparison, a human fingerprint only has around 40 distinct and unique features to it. So maybe that explains why when I go to travel across the United States, we're seeing more and more uses of visual technologies like Clear that allow people to quickly and efficiently identify who they are and prove exactly who they are by the unique features of their eyes so they can pass through security much faster than everybody else. Now, interestingly, and this is something that I learned a while back, and I still find it fascinating, the human eye remains roughly the same size from birth to death. So think about that. From the time we're a newborn until the time we die, our eyes remain essentially the same size. Each eye weighs a little bit under an ounce, and about 80% of the composition of the human eye is a jelly-like substance that we refer to as vitreous humor. Now, you may not know it, but when we view the world, our eyes see the world upside down. What do I mean by that? As images pass through our eyes to the retina, those images in the back of our eyes are inverted. So up is down and down is up. But as the brain processes the information that is passed through the optic nerve, the brain flips that inverted image over so it interprets the world as right side up. Now, you may not know it as well, but every single human eye has a blind spot. You and I, we all have one. Now, our blind spot is the area where the optic nerve exits the eye. There's no light sensitive cells in that part of the human eye where it connects to the optic nerve. Now, there's another powerful leadership lesson when I talk about blind spots, but that's not the topic I want to talk about today. So, here's a couple of other fun facts about the eye. The muscles that control our eyelids and manage our blinking are the fastest muscles that you and I have in our bodies. Maybe that's because on average we blink 15 to 20 times a minute during our waking hours every single day. Now, the eyelashes that we have that also protect our eyes from contaminants have an average lifespan of only 4 to 5 months. Now, interestingly enough, our eyes produce 3 types of tears. Basal tears lubricate our eyes so that we don't feel irritated and our eyes feel scratchy. Reflex tears wash away irritants like smoke or dust or debris that gets in our eyes. And emotional tears are triggered by strong emotions. And those emotional tears, interestingly enough, those emotional tears contain unique proteins and hormones that aren't found in any other tear. Now, again, an interesting fun fact, on average, we make somewhere between 15 and 30 gallons of tears every single year. Now, one last fun fact, and then I want to jump into the meat of the lesson today. Newborn babies cry without tears until they're somewhere between 4 and 13 weeks of age. Now, I'm talking about the eyes. Why? Because our eyes give us the unique ability to see the world around us. But it also poses an important question. Although we can see the world around us, are we really seeing the world around us? We can see, but are we really seeing? Now, if you go to the dictionary, eyesight is defined as a person's ability to see. The term 20/20 vision is used to describe what optometrists call normal vision acuity. A 20/20 vision assignment that someone gives you when you go take an eye test, it's a measurement of our eyes' clarity and sharpness as compared to other people. So when someone says, I've got 20/20 vision, what they're essentially saying is they can see the same amount of detail at 20 feet as the average person who also has normal vision. Now, if our eyesight is impaired, like mine is, doctors can prescribe corrective lenses. Now, that could be glasses or that could be contacts, or they can use surgery to improve the clarity and the sharpness of our vision. People that deal with cataracts often have a lens replacement that helps them see more clearly. Now, 2 of the more common eye impairments that you and I face are myopia and hyperopia. Both of these impairments can impact the quality of our sight. Now, myopia, that's nearsightedness. That refers to our ability to see objects clearly up close, but distant objects appear blurry. Now, hyperopia, which is farsightedness, is the ability to see distant objects clearly, but objects up close appear blurry. I have hyperopia. I have farsightedness. I can see off into the distance forever, but things up close to me are a little blurry. That's why I wear glasses. But there's another type of visual impairment that you and I need to be aware of, and that's where I want to lean in today's lesson. Not a single optometrist or ophthalmologist can detect this visual impairment, but it continues to plague millions and millions of people around the world every single day. It's visualization. It's seeing without seeing. Now, again, if we go back to the dictionary, vision is defined as the faculty or the state of being able to see. It's also defined as the ability to think about or plan the future with our imagination or with our wisdom. A third definition is this: vision is a mental image of what the future will be or could be. Now, perhaps a better definition is this: vision is the ability to interpret meaning and insight from what we see. That's the definition that I want to lean on as we take a few minutes to talk about seeing without seeing. Now, if vision is the ability to interpret meaning and insight from what we see, here's what I'm here to tell you. The lack of vision happens more often than you and I may believe. Let me give you this statement, and then I want to pose a question at the end of this statement. And this is going to be the premise for where I want to spend a few moments today. Life often reveals itself to you and I through what we see. Yet, how often do you and I fail to see the meaning and the insight of what we're seeing so that we can apply it to our lives? Now, let me give you a personal example that happened to me about a year ago. My wife loves power tools. She is the Mrs. Fix-It in the family. If there's something to be built and we don't want to hire someone to do it, my wife loves to take that on. That's something that she got from her dad, who is a carpenter. Now, my wife was using a circular saw I bought her a few years ago, and she was cutting some 2x4s for a project that she was working on. She was having a little bit of trouble aligning the blade with the marks that she'd drawn on the board to make sure that her cuts were straight and exactly the length she needed for the boards. So she asked me if I could help, and I came out and I was showing her with this specific type of circular saw where she needed to look as she cut. And as I reached down with my finger to point where she needed to look, I was seeing without seeing. What do I mean by that? Well, you probably guessed it. Seeing without seeing the proximity of my finger to the spinning blade, I sliced my finger open, and that resulted in a trip to urgent care and getting stitches in my finger. Now, if you go back and study auto accidents, one of the major causes of auto accidents, not only here in the United States, but around the world, is driver carelessness. By that, it's often described as not being visually aware of one's surrounding. It's being distracted or simply not paying attention and not being in the moment. So it begs the question, how often do you and I find ourselves driving down a road and all of a sudden we're oblivious to everything going on around us, and we fail to see a car change lanes? We fail to notice somebody in front of us stops unexpectedly, or somebody randomly pulls out in front of us, failing to stop at a stop sign or a stoplight. So again, it begs the question, if life reveals to us all the things we need to know to get the answers we need to move forward, how often do we fail to interpret the meaning and insight of what we're seeing so that we can actually apply it to our lives? We see life every day, but do we really, truly see it? Now, in business and in life, the answer to the problems that you and I are facing often are right in front of us. But unless we take the time to analyze, to reflect, and to otherwise think about what we are seeing and how we're going to apply it to our lives in some way, guess what? That answer remains elusive. It's kind of like that proverbial brass ring on the carousel that remains just outside your reach. Try as you want to get the ring and win the prize. If we're not paying attention to what life is trying to show us, we end up going around and around on the carousel, never being able to seize the prize because it's just outside our reach. Now, when we think about our eyesight, it enables us to read the words of amazing men and women who've taken the time to share their insights, their wisdom, and their life experiences with us in the form of an article or in the form of a book. Our eyes interpret the letters, the words, the sentences, and the phrases as we scan each page. But often we read the words and the phrases without applying vision and the insight it brings. Because remember, vision happens when you and I take the time to contemplate, to evaluate, and to consider what we just read so that we can learn something new that we can apply to our lives in some favorable way. Now, vision, remember, it is the understanding that happens when we interpret meaning and insight from the words that we've taken the time to read, if we've taken the time to read at all. And again, that's another story. So vision in the context of the way we're considering it right now isn't just a sight thing. Every single sense that we possess, and there's 5 senses, 6 if you count the sixth sense that many people describe as ESP, or that unique feeling of awareness around us. But if we just think about the 5 physical senses, the ability to have vision, insight, and understanding is important. Let me give you an example. In the Bible, in the New Testament, Jesus taught the people through parables. Now, parables are stories that teach a moral lesson. Aesop did something very familiar in ancient Greece. But in the book of Mark, chapter 4, verse 9, Jesus reminds his listeners, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, think about what he's saying. It's like asking the question, he who has eyes to see, let him see. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Jesus was saying this, just like we see without seeing, we often hear without hearing. Now, think about this. When we aren't actually listening to the words and the phrases that are being spoken to us by the people that we are living life with and engaging with at work, at home, at school, and in our community, we're failing to engage our subconscious mind that can help us interpret, evaluate, and to identify ways to apply what we're hearing. All too often, we remain disengaged and distracted, and we remain fully disengaged in the listening process, or at best, partially engaged. And as a result of that, we miss those unique aha moments that could change our lives for the better. Now, that leads me into a story that I want to share that really bears this out. And it's a famous story of Archimedes, one of the greatest inventors of ancient history. Now, Archimedes faced a dilemma in ancient Greece. He had been called and tasked by the king to solve a problem. Now, what was the problem? The king had given a lump of gold to a merchant, a goldsmith, and he crafted that merchant to create a solid gold crown. Now, when the goldsmith delivered the crown to the king, as the king picked it up and held it in his hands, he feared the merchant had not used all the gold, but had mixed the gold with silver and had kept the balance of gold for himself. So, wanting to know if this crown was pure gold or not, the king tasked Archimedes to solve the riddle. Now, Archimedes, like any of us, could see the crown, but he couldn't see a way to test the king's hunch. So for days, he pondered the problem. He looked at a lump of gold. He looked at a lump of silver, and he looked at the crown, and he could see, but he wasn't seeing the answer that he needed to see. And then one day, as he had done many times, he filled his bathtub to the rim, and he stepped into his bathtub to bathe. And as he saw the water spill out over the edge of the tub, as he'd seen it do many, many times, in that moment, not only did he see, he truly saw. He not only had eyesight, but he had vision. He understood the answer to his problem was right there as he was standing in his tub. You know, the story says that Archimedes ran naked through the streets of the city, shouting Eureka, which means I've found it. As he ran to inform the king, he had a solution to the problem. So what was the solution? Archimedes devised a method to determine the actual volume of the crown. And by measuring the volume of the crown, he could determine its purity by one thing: weighing the amount of water displaced when the crown was submerged. So what did he do? He measured the amount of water that was displaced by the crown when it was placed in a bucket of water. He used a similar bucket and did the same thing with a lump of silver. And then he did the same thing with a lump of gold. And he measured the amount of water that was displaced by each. And here's what he discovered. The amount of water displaced by the silver was less than the gold because it was less dense. And as a result of that, he was able to conclusively prove that this merchant, this goldsmith, was a thief, and the king's crown had been mixed with silver, an inferior metal. Now, Archimedes' eureka moment, his aha moment, was when he saw what he saw. Now remember, life often reveals itself to you and I through what we see, through what we hear, through what we taste, touch, and smell. But how often do we fail to interpret the meaning and the insight of what our senses are telling us so that we can apply it to our lives in some favorable way? Now, if you get into the area of human intelligence and human behavior in psychology, there's a phenomenon referred to as inattentional blindness. It's something that we all as a race deal with. Now, Inattentional blindness happens when we fail to notice something that is clearly visible because our attention is focused elsewhere or we're simply not paying attention. Inattentional blindness is in essence seeing without seeing, hearing without hearing, tasting without tasting, feeling without feeling. All of the sights that we possess to be able to garner information, to get the clues from life that will give us the answer we're seeking. It's like we're seeing without seeing. Inattentional blindness is something that we cannot define with an optometrist tool, but it happens to us almost every single day of our lives. Remember this, eyesight is our ability to see, but vision is our ability to interpret meaning and insight from the things we see and what we take in through our senses. So, how do we overcome inattentional blindness? We overcome this lack of vision by prioritizing our focus, by minimizing distractions, and being proactive by living in the moment. Now, when we allow our thoughts to become hijacked by past regrets or future anxiety, guess what? We fail to live in the moment. And when we become distracted, inattentional blindness takes place. We miss the lessons life is trying to teach us, and we have to go through and repeat that lesson again and again until we learn those lessons for ourselves. So let me leave you today with some action steps that you can take to avoid this inattentional blindness, this inability to utilize vision so that we can not only see, but we can really truly see what it is that we see. Let me give you 3 things. First is this: pay attention to your surroundings. How do we do that? We be present in the moment. We have to be intentionally aware of what we're seeing, what we're hearing, or what we are experiencing right now, this moment today. You know, it's often said the past is history and the future is a mystery. So if you think about that statement, this moment right now is the only moment that you and I have. We can either be in the moment to make the most of it so that we have an opportunity to see what we see and hear what we hear and allow our other senses to be revealed to us as answers to the problems we seek, or we can remain inattentional in our learning. Now, the second thing I want you to do is not only to pay attention to your surroundings, but to be intentional about looking for cues and clues. So every day, I want you to approach each moment, every single day, with an expectation of learning. Remember, every day life wants to teach us a lesson, but it's up to us to be open and willing to learn the lesson life wants to teach us. So every day when you wake up, ask yourself this question at the beginning of the day. What can this day and each moment of the day teach to me? What can it reveal to me? What can it show me that can make me a better version of who I am than I was the day before? Because when you ask that question, what can this moment teach me, reveal to me, or show me, that you open your mind and you encourage your subconscious to begin to actively look for cues and clues. Remember, life is often revealing itself to us through what we see, through what we hear, and through what we experience. But how often do we fail to interpret the meaning and insight of what we see and hear and experience so we can apply it to our lives? Now, thirdly, after you think about paying attention to your surrounding and looking for cues and clues, you want to ask questions and you want to seek clarity. Remember, as cues and clues reveal themselves to you, you want to be asking yourself, how do I apply these cues and clues to my life? How do I take what I'm learning in this moment and apply it in such a way that I become a better version of who I am or what I do? Or how can I apply this to solve a problem or move my life forward? What are we doing? We're remaining curious. And there's an interesting thing we know from human behavior, and that's this. When we remain curious, our subconscious mind remains open to examine and to look for and to interpret all of the what ifs that life is revealing to us every moment of every day. When we remain curious, it helps us piece together the cues and the clues so they form a cohesive picture of the answer that we're seeking to the questions that we're asking. What are we talking about? It's your brain's way of asking, do you really see it yet? The answer that you seek, do you see it? Now remember, every single hour of every single day that we are awake, we're taking in 36,000 bits of information just through our eyes. That doesn't take in all the other information that we're taking in from all of the other things that we're seeing, hearing, and experiencing. Now, within those 36,000 bits of information, the roughly 60,000 thoughts that you and I experience every day from what we see, hear, and experience, the answers that we're seeking are there as well. The answers that we're looking for to move us forward, to get us unstuck, to help us to continue to learn and to grow, or to help us scale our business or remove a limiting belief are found in all those bits of information we're taking in every single day. But we see the information with our eyes and our other senses as we take it in. But the more important question is this: are we seeing, are we hearing, and are we experiencing what we need from the insights we're gleaning by engaging vision, insight, and understanding to glean from the cues and the clues the answers that you and I are seeking? Remember, vision is the ability to interpret meaning and insight from what we see. We all have eyesight, the ability to see, but what we all need more of is vision, the ability to interpret meaning and insight from what it is that we see. And when I'm talking about vision, it's not just seeing, it's also hearing and what we're experiencing in life. Vision is about gleaning understanding that leads us to our own eureka moments, just like Archimedes. So here's my question: do you see it yet? Or are you living your life seeing without seeing? I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. I want to say thanks for joining me and have a great day.